Okay, so my Guns N' Roses LE, I installed under cabinet and back of cabinet hot rails basically. They use the signal from the inside hot rail. So you see this one, as this is changing color, it is changing the same way down here. On the right side we got 62 LEDs, on the left side we got 42 LEDs. So that's not only on the bottom, but also on the back. These things are routed into these little grates down here on both sides. So how did I install this? Actually, while I'm down here, it looks like this thing popped out a little bit. Still some tweaking to do. So let's start with how I put these together. Okay, so we've got a whole slew of parts that we're using to put this together. First is we need some of these ARGB LED strips. They come in a big reel, about 16 foot. You can either get them this form factor where they've got like this, I think it's called glue covered. You can see there it's kind of encapsulated inside what they say is glue. Or another style that I've gotten is it's called call it waterproof. I would argue that it's not really waterproof, but it's got like this clear plastic shell on it. So these are the two that you can go with. I just tried both for just to see which one I like better. With these guys, you can get these little clip connectors that go onto there. They're not the most secure, but they work okay. Alternatively, for these glue ones, you can get these connectors, and what those do is use pliers to cinch them down and get them right on there. They have inside of here these little basically fangs, more or less, that clamp down and pierce through the bottom of it to make contact with it. So really that's the hardest part with these things, is just getting a connection on those things. Alternatively, you can just solder right onto the wires. Obviously not so easily with the glue covered ones. You'd have to remove the glue first, but on these you could definitely try soldering on. So those are your options. You don't even have to get the waterproof ones, so to speak, but I thought I'd try these. They work a little better because you can use these connectors, and then on the other side here you just lay 3 wires in there, clamp down on that, and extend it out. So what I've got this sitting on is this light diffuser rail. 62 LEDs is what I've got right here. Unfortunately, it is about 1 LED too long for that. Now you could take shortcuts. You could snip it off if you wanted to, or what you could do instead is grab an extra rail and hack it down to size just to cover that, maybe give it about 1 inch or 2. That's what I've done in my case. So it's not the end of the world. You just put this thing in a vise, grab your hacksaw or whatever you can to cut it down. It takes a little bit of time, but it's worth it, I think. Then finally, what you're going to do to put on top of this is you're going to put this light diffuser shell on top of that. I guess before you do that, you want to adhere this thing to the bottom of it so it's not sliding around. These glue covered ones have double-sided tape on them. The bottom, you just remove the paper there, and then it'll adhere to it just fine. So that is what it's going to look like. So you're going to do this times 4. You're going to do it for 62 LEDs for the right side. Easy way to count is these things come in reels. Every time you see these little solder joints, between each of the solder joints is 30 LEDs, at least with this kit it is, and the other one that I got. So you'll do 62 times 2, and then you'll do a 42 times 2. The 42 ones will be shorter. They'll probably come to about, I don't know, there or so. You can either be kind of clean and hack it off so that it's not got all this extra run on it, or you can just leave it as is. So then finally, once you hack this all out, then we have to build the harnesses that go from this thing into the machine. My preference is, because these things, pinball machines are always going to be moving at some point, is you want to make it adaptable to be moved easily. So I bought these wires. They're clipped together right now, but you can easily pull them apart. And what you do with these 3 wires, you'd basically lie into here. You'd probably want to trim off the excess wires there first, put them in there, clamp it down, make sure you've got your signals lined up as you want. Notice on here it says ground on the top, the input in the middle, and 5-volt on the bottom. So keep in mind the color of your signal. So green would be your signal, red would be your 5-volt, and white would be your ground. So what happens is this thing will be coming out of here, then this thing will be going into the inside of your cabinet, and that's where we need to power this thing on the inside of the cabinet, as well as splice into the data signal for your hot rails. So let's go take a look at that. All right, one additional note: when you get whenever you're attaching to the LED strip at any point, like when you are clamping down onto this and completing the signal path, best thing to do to make sure that you actually got it lined up correctly is to use a multimeter and check the ground and power continuity. So inside of this, from this angle, you can tap into one side or the other, and if it's still attached to this reel all the way at the other end, you're going to have this guy, which is actually just the power and signal for this are the red and black. It's actually tapped off with these 2 as well. So you should be able to make sure that you got a complete signal from one end to the other, and that goes for any kind of connector, whether you're soldering on or if you are clamping on with this connector or some other connector. Always double check, make sure you got it lined up. When I first put this one on, I didn't quite have it lined up, and I could see, not on this one, but the holes that the piercings had made were actually off a little bit. So make sure when you clamp this down that you've got it just perfectly squared, because if you don't, then it's not going to work. So just keep that in mind. All right, so the things we care about inside of the cabinet for tying it to the hot rails are going to be right here. We've got, you can see it says L rail up top, R rail on the bottom, so it's left rail, right rail. Off of these things, we do not want to tap into the power. We want to leave the power alone. We're going to tap into the ground and the signal, which by the convention is ground is white, signal's green. Here I've got these things that splice into that. You can see green is going to be my left one on here. I didn't have really good colors to match, but on this one here, the white goes to red and the green goes to the blue. On this other one, the white goes to the black and the green goes to the green. And these guys go down here, and don't really have a good way to show this, but basically you can see here, for example, that black and green taps off into there, and those 2 wires, they feed out to those left hot rails in the bottom and the back of the cabinet. On top of that, you need to power it. Okay, so in order to power it, we've got our own separate power supply for those, for all of the LED strips. They're all fed off of this guy. This one, if we look over here, I've got it, I've just hacked it off at the end, and I'm splicing into the red and black wire off the top of that. And you can see red and blue is basically my 5-volt power line, and that's coming back over to here. And that thing, basically you tap into the red for both of the things that both of the hot rails for the left side. They each have their own connector coming out through here, and they need to get the power, and then they also need the ground. So the key thing here is the ground for the signal coming out of here and out of the power supply, they're both tied together. Maybe a little hard to see here. I'll try and get a better view at some point. So that's for the left side. The right side is basically identical, but it's got its own set of signals. Now, how do we plug this guy in? So this, traditionally you could plug it right in the service outlet. The problem with that is when you turn the machine off, the LEDs will just remain on with the last signal that they got. So in order to circumvent that, what I have this plugged into is not the surface outlet. I have it plugged into this fancy little guy. So this is a IoT relay. I have it plugged into my normally off outlet right there. And what that means is it only will power on when the signal that it gets from here is on. And this is just a USB wire. There was an empty USB port here that I'm tapping into, and whenever that signal goes high, then this normally off switch will go on. I got another video to explain more details about that, but basically what you plug into here can come from just about anything. It doesn't have to be this USB port, it just has to be a steady power signal inside your pinball machine. So you could tap it into, the coin door power if you want. You could tap it into something else, but just be careful choosing what you choose, because you don't want to tap it into like the subwoofer or the general illumination. That's going to be intermittent signal. All right, so I thought I'd come back here for maybe a slightly better view on things. So coming out of here, these are the two sets of wire couplers that are coming from the left side hot rail. You can see they're both coming in here. They're going to share the exact same connections, basically. So let's follow just one of them. Let's follow this one because it's a little closer. So this guy, we have power, which is going to what? So that's going to this red line. The red line eventually just goes back to this power supply's red line. So that's here. If we follow that back, the red and blue goes into there. Okay, so that's one of the wires. Then the white and the green, where do those go to? Those are going to be shared between the two, and those go. You can see here it's tapping into the, these are the signals from the L rail on the PCB on the underside of the cabinet. So again, just matching the colors, matching the signals. So ground goes to ground, signal goes to signal. And then also note here that it also passes through on the ground to the ground on the power supply. So that's how you got to wire it up. That's probably the only complicated thing here is just getting the wiring harness all set up correctly, but once you do it, it's pretty simple. You can see here I didn't even have to solder anything. I'm just using splices. I've got a T-tap splice here, and I've got I think it's called like paired T-taps, or I don't know what these things are called, but they're pretty cool. I'll link them in the description. And symmetrically, it's going to be the same on the other side. So that's how you do that. So one final thing to mention is about the mounting the rails to your cabinet. So for these rails, I was a little lazy. I just used some double-sided tape. It's probably not a good permanent fixture. I wouldn't recommend it. What I did on the back of the cabinet is a little better in my opinion. So on the back, these diffusers come with these little mounting tabs. So what you can do is you can, they're screwed in to the cabinet, and what's nice about that is you can actually easily take these things off, for when you need to move the machine or if you need to do maintenance or whatever it is. Because when you fold this cabinet down, like you don't want this thing splitting in half, obviously. So you want to be able to take them off. So this thing here is basically just slotting this guy in. I can, peel this guy out, if I need to, and then these guys can remain on there, and they will not be interfered with, when you go to move the machine. So I would recommend using those.
You probably want to pre-drill to get the screw holes in there just right. But with that in mind, don't go too far, because using any electronic drill on a pinball machine is always can be a little frightening. So just take your time and go really slow. Don't drill that much, just to give it enough to let the screw set in when you do put them in. And that's about it. Enjoy. All right, so lastly, here are the products that I will link in the description. Some of these are optional. For example, you don't necessarily need the IoT relay. That's just the solution I came up with to make sure that the power is synchronized with the actual pinball machine. If you've got another method, let me know, but I think this one's pretty nice, especially for the price. So here are those low voltage T-tap wire connectors, the LED diffusers, the connectors that basically connect from the RGB strip out to any of your wires that you need. And then here's just a spool of wire. I think that would pretty much sum it all up for a price of about 110 bucks. I don't think it's all that bad at all. Of course, you got to put some sweat equity into it as well. Get your hacksaw out. Solder if you're capable. Do whatever it takes. But hopefully that gives you guys enough information to do it yourself. Have fun out there.